Welcome to the deep dive. You know where we go deep on a certain topic based on sources you've shared with us. And today we're going to take a journey into the world of the Science of Identity Foundation.
Or SIF for short.
Yes, if for short. A story that touches on spirituality, politics, and maybe even some financial intrigue.
Yeah, it certainly does. I think, we have a fascinating mix of materials to work with here. We have forum posts from alleged former followers of the group. We have official SIF publications. We've got news articles, even some Wikipedia entries.
Sounds like we're going to uncover some contradictions here.
Yeah, absolutely.
What makes it particularly fascinating is this is a group that seems to be everywhere, like from quiet Hawaiian communities to the halls of U.S. Congress. What should we know going into this?
Well, I think the story really revolves around Chris Butler, also known by the spiritual name Jagadguru Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa.
Whoa,
Yeah,
that's a name.
and it's a mouthful.
Yeah.
And his journey starts back in the 1960s, a time of great social and cultural upheaval. And we find him attracting a following described as surfers, drifters, and chanters, living a rather unconventional lifestyle under a freeway in Hawaii.
That's not exactly the image that comes to mind when you think of a spiritual leader.
No, not really.
How do you go from living under a freeway to founding SIF?
His path led him to the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, better known as the Hare Krishnas, or ISKCON.
Okay.
And within ISKCON, he received the name Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa. And it means one spiritual form which is full of bliss.
Oh.
But his time with ISKCON was marked by both acceptance and eventual conflict.
Sounds like his journey was anything but straightforward.
No.
So what led to the split?
Well, by 1977, there was a clear break. Several key differences had emerged, including Butler's decision to marry, his allowance of unshaven heads for disciples, and what some saw as a less rigid interpretation of Vaishnava texts. These are the ancient scriptures central to the Hare Krishna tradition. This departure led to the formation of the Science of Identity Foundation, which he initially called the Harinama Society.
So while rooted in the similar tradition, SEF kind of distinguished itself from ISKCON. What did they emphasize?
Well, they emphasize meditation, yoga, and a personal journey of self-discovery. They reject the idea of institutional salvation, meaning they don't believe that belonging to a particular organization is the only path to enlightenment.
Makes sense that a group coming kind of out of the 60s, counterculture, might lean toward individual experience over the rigid doctrines.
Right.
What about their lifestyle? Did they have specific practices or anything?
Yes, they promote a strict ethical code for followers emphasizing vegetarianism. And they avoid activities they consider detrimental, such as gambling, smoking, alcohol, and drug use, and what they call illicit sex.
That sounds pretty disciplined.
Right.
It's interesting how these practices reflect the spiritual beliefs. What role did Butler's wife, Wailana, play in all of this?
Well, Wailana has been instrumental in popularizing yoga. Her internationally acclaimed TV series, Wailana Yoga, has reached a global audience. She's even received the prestigious Padma Shri Award from the Indian government. So that's a significant recognition of her contribution to yoga.
Yeah, that is significant because it indicates kind of a mainstream recognition for
Right.
her work. It seems like she and Butler were a pretty powerful force in bringing yoga to a wider audience. Did Butler's public image change over time?
Interestingly, yes. A 2017 New Yorker article highlighted a shift in his presentation.
Okay.
He seemed to move away from the image of a Hare Krishna dissident and started presenting himself as a representative of a broader Vaishnava movement, encompassing a wider range of traditions within Hinduism.
It seems like he was maybe trying to broaden his appeal, but this is where things take a turn, right? This is where we're going to talk about politics.
This is where the story gets truly intriguing. In 1976, Butler's followers formed a political party called Independence for Godly Government.
Okay.
And they campaigned as a multi-faith coalition of, conservative-minded reformers, but carefully concealing their connection to SEF.
So that seems deliberately secretive.
It does.
Who were they running against, and what offices were they seeking?
Well, they had candidates for both the U.S. House of Representatives and mayoral elections in Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
And their campaign was funded by some rather unusual sources, at least for a political party.
What do you mean by unusual? Like, where was the money coming from?
Think local newspapers and even a health food store chain, all operated by Butler's disciples.
That's an interesting way to keep finances within a specific group.
Right.
So we have this spiritual leader, famous yoga teacher as his wife, and a secretive political party, and then enters a multi-level marketing company.
Yes, the company is called QNET. And it has a global presence, but its ties to Ceph run surprisingly deep.
How deep are we talking? What's the connection?
Well, QI Group, the parent company of QNET, owns Down to Earth, a popular vegetarian grocery chain in Hawaii.
Oh, so that's the grocery store we were talking about earlier, the one that was funding the political party.
Exactly. And the financial web gets even more tangled. Down to Earth's parent company, Healthies Inc., has documented financial ties to Ceph, and Ceph's 2012 tax return shows a substantial sum of money earned from a sale of Healthies Inc. stock.
This is a complex network of financial connections. Makes you wonder about the motivations behind it all.
It does.
Who are some of the main players involved in this?
Well, there's a few key figures I think to keep in mind. First, we have Alan Tibby, also known as Akarya Das,
Okay.
a prominent SIF teacher and international businessman.
Okay.
And leaked internal SIF letters indicate his involvement in managing SIF finances.
So he's kind of a high-ranking member with financial authority.
Yeah.
Who else?
Then there's Joseph Bismark, also known as Japa Das. He's the managing director of QI Group and a longtime devotee of Butler. Interestingly, he lists the Science of Identity University as his education on his official bio.
A university dedicated to the science of identity. Never heard of that.
Yeah.
Who else should we know about?
Finally, there's Sunil Kamani, who goes by Syama Sundara Das. He's a close associate of Butler and, like Tibby, involved in managing SISFI finances. What makes him particularly interesting is his connection to U.S. Representative Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard, the former presidential candidate.
The one and only.
What's her connection to all of this?
Well, Gabbard identifies as Hindu and has publicly acknowledged Butler as her Guru Dev. That's a term of great respect in Hinduism. And her parents, Mike and Carol Gabbard, were early followers of Butler. Mike Gabbard was even involved with a SIF-run school in Hawaii called the Punamaloa School.
So there are deep family ties to SIFIF. What role did this Kamani guy play in Gabbard's life specifically?
Well, he was heavily involved in her political career. He helped with fundraising. He served as her liaison with the Hindu-American community, even traveled with her to India.
It's incredible how intertwined all of these individuals and organizations are. Looks like there's much more to uncover about these connections between SIF, QNET, and Tulsi Gabbard. But first, I think it's time to address the elephant in the room, the controversies that have plagued SIF.
Right. Let's explore those accusations and examine the darker side of this organization. Well, I think the most serious accusation leveled against SIF is that it operates as a cult.
Yeah.
Former members interviewed by The New Yorker described Butler as an unquestionable authority figure.
Right.
Someone they saw as akin to a god who was not open to questioning.
That's a pretty powerful and concerning statement.
It is.
Do we have any specific examples of this type of behavior?
Yeah, some former members have described instances where Butler would publicly mock his devotees.
Oh, wow.
And he would claim that this was a form of Krishna's mercy.
Hmm.
This is a very unconventional approach to spiritual guidance.
Say the least.
Yeah.
What about these allegations of financial irregularities? Can you tell me more about that?
So online forum posts from alleged former followers detail a disturbing contrast.
Okay.
They describe members living in poverty while serving Butler,
Hmm.
leading to concerns about possible exploitation and misuse of funds.
So that's a stark contrast to the financial success we saw with the down-to-earth grocery chain,
Right.
and the sale of Healthy's Inc. stock.
Exactly.
Are there any specific examples of these financial discrepancies that we know of?
Well, one former member shared an incident in which they were reprimanded for using SIF funds to buy Butler a lei,
What's that?
a traditional Hawaiian flower garland.
Oh, okay.
And Butler's reaction, as documented in leaked internal letters, was reportedly extreme and even included profanity.
Wow.
It's hard to reconcile this behavior with the image of a compassionate spiritual leader.
Yeah, it does seem like a bit of a contradiction.
It is.
And then there's the issue of those controversial lectures that you mentioned.
All right, this is perhaps one of the most sensitive topics surrounding Butler and Ceph.
Okay.
Former members, including those who attended Ceph-run schools like the Punamaloa School, have accused Butler of making homophobic statements in his lectures.
Okay.
Some even claim that these lectures were played for children.
That's a very serious accusation.
It is.
Did Ceph offer any response to this?
They did.
Okay.
In a statement on Medium, Seth acknowledged the existence of these controversial lectures, but stated that they were removed from circulation over a decade ago.
So they're admitting that these lectures existed.
Right.
They're saying that they're no longer using them.
That's right, and their statement expresses concern that the language used in those lectures might overshadow their current message of universal love.
Okay.
And they emphasize their mission to share their teachings and meditation techniques with everyone, regardless of sexual orientation.
Okay, it does seem like they're trying to distance themselves from those past teachings.
Yeah.
Now let's get back to QNET. You mentioned earlier that this multi-level marketing company has faced some legal issues.
Yeah, that's right. QNET and some of its key figures have been the subject of legal troubles and investigations around the world.
Can you give us some specific examples?
Of course. So, in the Philippines, Joseph Bismark.
Okay, the QI Group Managing Director.
Yes, the one we discussed earlier. And Wiedzy, another founder of QNET,
Okay.
faced charges of syndicated estafa.
What is that?
That's a form of racketeering involving a substantial sum of money.
That sounds pretty serious, what happened with that case.
Well, the details are a little bit murky, but it appears that the charges were eventually dropped.
Okay.
However, the case brought a lot of negative attention to QNET and raised questions about their business practices.
Were there other legal issues?
Yes. In India, the Supreme Court scrutinized QNET's operations. And in several countries, including Iran, Syria, Afghanistan, and Rwanda,
Oh, wow.
there have been widespread accusations that the company operates as a pyramid scheme.
A pyramid scheme? Can you just explain to our listeners what exactly that means and how that differs from, like, a legitimate multi-level marketing operation?
Sure. So a pyramid scheme typically relies heavily on recruiting new members
Okay.
rather than selling actual products or services.
Okay.
So participants often pay a large upfront fee
Or,
with the promise of earning high commissions by recruiting others.
right.
However, the structure is unsustainable because it requires an ever-expanding base of new recruits.
Got it.
So those at the bottom of the pyramid rarely make any money,
Yeah.
and the entire system can collapse when recruitment slows down.
So it's basically a system that's designed to benefit those at the top,
Right.
with little regard for those who join later.
That's one way to put it. Yeah, the lack of genuine product sales often distinguishes a pyramid scheme from a legitimate multi-level marketing operation.
Got it.
And in the case of QNET, these accusations have been persistent and widespread.
And this company, facing allegations of being a pyramid scheme,
Right.
is financially linked to SIF.
That appears to be the case based on the information we have. It definitely raises concerns about the financial ethics of both organizations
Right.
and how their relationship might impact SIF's operations.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
You know, we've gone from spiritual teachings to political maneuvering and allegations of financial impropriety.
Right.
It's a very complex web of interconnected people and organizations.
It is.
Where do we even begin to make sense of it all?
It is a lot to process.
Yeah.
And we're not finished yet.
Right.
We still need to delve deeper into Tulsi Gabbard's connection to SIF
Okay.
and what it might mean for her political career and public image.
Yes. Let's circle back to that. You mentioned that Gabbard's family has deep ties to SIF. But what about Gabbard herself? How close is she to the organization?
Well, it's a complicated relationship, and there have been efforts to kind of downplay the connection.
Okay.
However, she has publicly acknowledged Butler as her guru.
Right.
Her brother and sister worked at the down-to-earth grocery chain.
Right. Which is owned by QNET's parent company.
Exactly. And then there's Sunil Khamenei.
Right. Khamenei Butler's ninja, as one former SIF member described him.
Exactly. And he was not only involved in managing SIF finances,
Right.
but also played a crucial role in Gabbard's political life.
Yeah.
Yet, despite his long-standing association with SIF, Gabbard has defended his character, adding another layer of complexity to the situation.
So it sounds like she's trying to distance herself from the more controversial aspects of SIF
It seems that way.
while still maintaining her personal connection to Butler.
Right.
Is that a common strategy for politicians who have controversial figures in their past?
It's a delicate balancing act for any public figure,
Yeah.
especially someone with political aspirations. And it's not just Khamenei,
Okay.
Gabbard's chief of staff, and his wife,
Okay.
who served as her finance director, both lived in and ran their business from a home owned by Joseph Bismark,
Oh, wow.
the QI Group managing director.
Those are some close ties.
They are.
It seems like we've only just scratched the surface of this story.
We have.
Is there anything else about Gabbard's connection to SIF that we should know about?
Well, there's one more detail that I think is worth mentioning. One of the sources we reviewed, a forum post from an alleged former SEF member, claims that Gabbard herself was involved in recruiting new members for SIF during her time at the University of Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's important to note that this is just one source,
Right.
and we haven't been able to independently verify this information.
So it's possible that her involvement with SIF goes beyond her family ties and her personal relationship with Butler.
It's possible.
This is all incredibly complex. It seems like we're dealing with more than just a spiritual organization here.
We are.
You know, SIF has its fingers in so many different pies, from politics to business. What does it all mean?
It's a lot to take in, and it raises some important questions that go beyond the specifics of SIF and its connections. Questions about the nature of belief,
Right.
the intersection of spirituality and finances,
Yeah.
and the responsibility we have as individuals when engaging with organizations that wield power and influence.
You've given us a lot to think about. What stands out to you as the most significant takeaway from all of this?
I think what's most fascinating to me is how SIF has managed to operate under the radar for so long.
Yeah.
Despite these controversies and allegations, it raises questions about the level of scrutiny applied to spiritual organizations and the potential for abuse within systems that demand unquestioning devotion.
Those are really important questions, and they're relevant to anyone who's considering joining a spiritual organization or even just following a charismatic leader. You've given us a lot to ponder. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this deep dive?
Well, I think it's important to remember that while we've explored a great deal of information, there's always more to uncover.
Yeah.
This is just a starting point.
Right.
I encourage you to continue your own research.
Okay.
Seek out different viewpoints
Yeah.
and form your own conclusions. Remember, knowledge is most powerful when it's understood and applied.
Yeah. You know, it's easy to get lost in the specifics of this case.
Right.
But I think, as you said, there are some broader implications here.
Yeah.
What can we as individuals learn from the story of SIF?
Well, I think this deep dive really highlights the importance of critical thinking, especially when engaging with any organization, whether it's spiritual,
Right.
political, or even a business.
Okay.
It's about questioning assumptions,
Yeah.
seeking out diverse perspectives,
Uh-huh.
and being wary of systems that discourage dissent or demand absolute loyalty.
Yeah. You know, it's so easy to get swept up in charismatic leadership or the allure of belonging.
It is.
But as we've seen with SIF, there can be a darker side to these groups.
Absolutely. And it's not about dismissing spirituality or organized religion altogether.
Right.
It's about approaching these areas with a healthy dose of skepticism, independent thought, and a willingness to ask tough questions.
And perhaps being mindful of the financial structures surrounding these organizations, because the connections between SIF, QNET, and these various businesses really raise some red flags.
Yeah. Transparency and accountability are crucial, especially when large sums of money are involved.
Right.
If an organization is reluctant to disclose its financial dealings,
Yeah.
or if its leaders seem to be profiting personally, that's a sign that something might be amiss.
We've certainly uncovered a lot of information in this deep dive.
We have.
We've gone from the beaches of Hawaii to the halls of Congress,
Right.
uncovering a story that's both fascinating and at times quite troubling.
Yeah, I think we've seen the evolution of a spiritual organization. We've explored the complexities of its controversial leader
Right.
and examined its entanglement with politics and a multi-level marketing company facing serious allegations.
Yeah.
It's a story that raises questions about the nature of power, influence, and the responsibility we have to hold those in authority accountable.
We've also considered, I think, the broader implications for all of us. You know, urging listeners to engage in critical thinking,
Absolutely.
to be wary of systems that discourage questioning,
Right?
and to demand transparency from the organizations and leaders they choose to follow.
I think that's key.
So where do we go from here? What should our listeners do with all of this information?
Well, I encourage you to continue exploring.
Okay.
Don't take our word for it.
Yeah.
Do your own research.
Mm-hmm.
Seek out different viewpoints and form your own conclusions. Remember, knowledge is most powerful when it's understood and applied.
And perhaps even share your own thoughts or experiences. You know, this is a conversation that deserves to continue.
It does.
We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
You know what resonated with you. What questions do you still have?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the Science of Identity Foundation.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep diving deeper.